Hey, a few of you contacted me and you're asking me about this painting above my left shoulder. I had to think for a minute. My left shoulder. That's my wife's painting. She's an incredible artist. And that's a painting she did of the beach, obviously from the beach during sunset facing the west. So that has nothing to do with the podcast today, but since a few of you have asked about it, I just want to let you know what a great artist Nellie Jo is. Isn't that incredible? Hey, our topic today is how long are sermons today? How long are sermons today? Of course, there is no single answer. There is no, okay, everything fits within this range 100%. There's sermon lengths all over the place. And there's some people who are pretty passionate about this. The sermon has to be at least 55 minutes or it's not a God. And then the others who say if you go longer than 15 minutes, you can't get your point across. Well, those are kind of some extremes, but we are finding that there is a certain sweet spot to the length of sermons, and we'll be talking about that and how long are sermons today. As always, we thank you, Belay, for being our exclusive sponsor, our only sponsor that we've had at the Church Answers podcast. Our friends at Belay are productivity experts. And what I mean is they will provide you a person, an assistant, a bookkeeper, someone for your staff. They do all the work. They do all the payroll. They're responsible for everything, all the legal, anything that is related to personnel. They do it, and you simply have the services of this person. It's an incredible opportunity. We encourage you to look at it. And we have quite frankly found that at Church Answers, when we bring someone on from Belay, we're getting the equivalent of 1.5 to 2 people for the work they do because they're trained so well. The screening process is really rigorous. And then the matching with the organization they serve. So you will love Belay. Go to them at belaysolutions.com and also get a new book about the productivity, the power of productivity by going to Thom at 55123. That's THOM at 55123. And you'll get a free download of a very good, fascinating book. How long are sermons today? I'd be interested to know how long your sermon is. We've done surveys on this, and this is why we have the information. But again, I realize that some of you are not pastors or preachers, but I'd be fascinated to hear how long some of your sermons are. So, give us feedback so we can hear from you and how long you take to preach a typical sermon. There's a possibility that you don't have a certain time length that you do sermons. Most pastors do. Most pastors can tell you within a short, brief range how long their sermons are. They feel like that's the best length for their congregation. They feel like it is a rhythm that they've gotten themselves into. They have trained themselves over time to be efficient with their words as God leads them in the pulpit. And as I said at the beginning of this podcast, we fully recognize that there are disagreements about the length of a sermon. And we could go into all the reasons why. Some people will say, well, you cannot fully do justified exposition to a text in only 20 minutes. And then others will say you should be able to get a key truth out of that within 20 minutes. And I'm just using 20 minutes as an arbitrary number. So there are different perspectives on this. You may have a different perspective than we're going to share, but we're not actually sharing what we think should be. We're going to share what is. So we're going to answer the question, how long are sermons today? Okay, let's get the answer done first. The typical range is a 13-minute range. The vast majority come in between 22 and 35 minutes. The vast majority come in between 22 and 35 minutes. Once you get outside of that range at 36 or 21 on either side, sermons that are briefer, sermons that are longer, you are now in a minority of length of sermon preachers. But if you're in the 22 to 35 category, you are represented by a sizable majority of preachers. Now, that answers the question of the podcast, how long are sermons today? The vast majority, and it's almost 6 out of 10 now, the vast majority of sermons are 22 to 35 minutes, a 13-minute range. The obvious question that comes with this is why? Why are they in that range? Well, as we talk to pastors, they feel like it will take somewhere around 30 minutes, what I'm saying, to be able to teach and preach a text with any significant meaning. They also think culturally that most people will be tuned out if you go too far longer than 30 minutes. Now, I will admit, I can listen to three preachers, really four, and go longer than 35 minutes. Well, those three preachers are Alistair Begg. I love listening to him. I wish I had his accent. As you can tell, I don't have anything close to his. But I can look up after listening to Alistair Begg and 45 minutes have gone and I can just hardly believe it. So Alistair Begg, Sam Rainer, Art Rainer, and Jess Rainer. There was a common pattern with the last three. They all happen to be Rainers. All three of them in ministry, two of them in pastors, all three of them preach. So the latter three, I think they're really good, of course, but there's obviously some familial reasons for me to stay with those four. But here's the thing about Sam, Art, and Jess. Their sermons, almost all the time, fall within that 22 to 35 minute range. And if Alistair Begg goes longer than that, guess what? He's Alistair Begg. A few people can get away with things that others cannot. So if you are not an adept preacher, if you are a bad preacher, if you go longer than 35 minutes, you become a long-winded bad preacher. If you go shorter than 22 minutes, you are a preacher who's not saying much regardless of how many minutes you do. So the essence of it is, in the culture of the American congregations today, more and more pastors are in that range. Now, Thom, is 13 minutes a pretty wide range? Yeah, it is. I simply started looking to where the majority would fall, and now it's becoming a significant majority as it's getting closer and closer to 60% are in that 22 to 35 minute range. But one thing I've noticed is that the length of sermons on the long side tend to be decreasing more than the length of sermons on the short side. So the 36-minute plus sermons are becoming rarer than the less than 22-minute sermons, if you are following me on what I just said there. So you want to compare your sermons to others? You don't have to compare them for quality. You don't have to compare them because every pastor has been called of God to a unique situation, but you may want to compare them for length. And if you're in the 22 to 35 minute range, you are like the majority of pastors. That is not a qualitative statement. That is a research observation statement. So how long are most sermons today? Once again, 22 to 35 minutes makes up nearly 60% of all sermons. One other point, longer sermons are becoming less frequent. Shorter sermons are becoming more frequent. Most of them 22 to 35 minutes. Okay, thank you again, Belay. Love you. Love what you're doing. Thank you for being our sponsor from the onset. Thank you for being the kind of organization that cares about churches and church leaders. And you care so much about us, you want us to be as productive as possible. And that's why you supply these workers. I also want to mention this. Grab a hold of one of my newest books. And that newest book is called When the People Pray. And it is a book about praying for your pastor. We're talking about pastors preaching. Pastor, you can get it and hand that book out to your members. I mean it. Don't be ashamed or embarrassed to ask for prayer. If you're a lay person or staff person listening, one of the greatest things you can do for your pastor is to hand that book to them. So get the book When the People Pray. Go to belaysolutions.com and find out all about them. And just continue to come to the Church Answers podcast. We'll continue to offer those bite-sized nuggets where we can give you a little bit of information 3 times a week to edify you, encourage you, and to help you be a better leader. As always, thank you for being a part of the Church Answers podcast, the Church Answers family, and all that you do to serve the kingdom of God. Now, we will see you in the next episode. Remember, we drop 3 of these a week. So if you haven't listened to the other 2 this week, you have the opportunity to do so. Thank you again for being a listener or a viewer, YouTube, at the Church Answers podcast. See you soon. Hey, folks, this is a PS to our podcast. We got some exciting stuff that we want to offer you absolutely for free. Sam, when you think about predictive factors in a church's growth, if you take out demographics, what are some things that come to mind? Just two. I mean, don't give me a list of 10. Just two or three things that come to mind on predictive growth of a church.
Well, evangelism and whether the church is doing it or not.
Bingo.
And then I will add, is it an ongoing evangelism emphasis?
Double bingo. Well? Double, and maybe something about leadership and their commitment to that. So all of the above.
Evangelistic churches have evangelistic pastors. Is the staff, is the lead pastor doing the work themselves?
We have a free download for you, and it's actually a sheet that you can self-score. You answer 20 questions, anywhere from strongly disagree to strongly agree. And we come back and we predict what your growth rate is going to be for the next year in worship attendance. It's not a perfect tool, but it's a good tool. There's a link to that for the attendance predictor. Look in the show notes. You'll absolutely love it. That's cool. We'll see you soon.